Welcome to the Diplomat Couch, a program where we speak to ambassadors and the heads of United Nations missions in Zimbabwe. The focus is to understand what the embassies are doing in terms of sustainable development, goal-oriented activities in Zimbabwe, and that applies as well to the United Nations missions. But we also seek to understand, the state of relations, both bilateral and trade, between Zimbabwe and the countries that we relate to. Now, my name is Love Mochangira, and I'm joined on the program today by the Australian ambassador to Zimbabwe, Her Excellency Bronte Moules. Your Excellency.
Hello, it's lovely
it's
to be here.
It's nice to have you on the program.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Now, Australia is a very fascinating country. It's not just a country, it also happens to be a continent. Can you explain to us how that is?
Sure. Well, it is a bit unusual because Australia is an island. We live in Australia on the largest island in the world, so we don't have any land borders. That's the big thing that's pretty unusual about Australia.
So you're surrounded by seas.
We're surrounded by seas, no land borders, which when you think about it is a very unusual thing. So that's why we're a continent in our own right, as well as being, of course, a country.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Now, talk to us briefly about your relationship with the UK.
Oh, well, that's an interesting question too, because Australia is a former colony of the United Kingdom.
Sure.
And I should just say on that note, of course, we, like people all over the world, were deeply saddened by the recent passing of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, who was Queen of Australia as well, because we retained the monarch. But Australia gained its independence in 1901. So we have been an independent country for all that time, but we retain very strong links to the United Kingdom, including through the monarchy, but also as a member of the Commonwealth. Yeah. But I should say just on that, in terms of Australia's history, that's when Australia gained independence from the United Kingdom. But Australia's indigenous civilization is one of the oldest continuous civilizations in the world, probably the oldest. It goes back way more than 60,000 years. So when we talk about Australia's history, that's the perspective of it. It's the indigenous Australian people who have been there for hundreds of thousands of years. Yeah.
It's an amazing statistic. Let's now focus on the Australia's economy. What are the key sectors driving the economy of your country?
We've got a fairly diversified economy, and it's part of Australia's resilience and strength, I think. Like every country, we've faced a lot of challenges in the COVID recovery, but we've actually had about 20 years of continuous economic growth. So we do have a lot of diversity and strength. The main sectors, though, are in the minerals and resources, natural resources sector, of which we have quite a lot, the agriculture sector, but also services, information technology, education and tourism. So quite a diverse range.
Diverse economy, yeah. Yes, indeed. And in terms of exports and imports, would you want to briefly touch on that as well?
Sure. Well, I guess consistent with the main sectors in which we produce, exports of crude oil, of natural gas, natural resources is a big part of it, but also in the agriculture sector, Australian beef and wheat are very popular, very big exports. And again in services, both education but also telecommunications and other areas are a big part of our export sector. And we import a big variety of things depending on different, from different parts of the world. A lot of our trade and trading relations are based in our immediate region around the Indo-Pacific, but we do have global.
China,
we're very engaged on the whole global network as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe while we're on that, do you import anything from Zimbabwe?
We do import small amounts of things from Zimbabwe. We don't have a huge bilateral trading relationship, but it is a healthy relationship, and it's one of the things as an embassy would like it to grow. But we import some food products and some timber products. It varies a little bit from year to year, but we do have some some imports and some exports to some machinery and parts and equipment and things, yeah.
Okay. And so I know that there would be business people that are listening to us right now, and probably they are keen to see what opportunities exist in Australia for exports. Would there be areas, maybe any specific areas you might want to highlight?
Well, I think, look, Australia is a friendly investment destination, I should say, and partly because I think the strength of our economy, the resilience of our economy, but also generally in terms of ease of doing business, Australia ranks very highly because we have a lot of transparency, a lot of predictability, which is what investors want. So whether it's in the construction sector or the natural resources sector or food and beverage or hospitality industry, there are actually a lot of opportunities, and as I said, as an investment destination, it's a very strong and attractive and predictable market. So yes, there are opportunities there.
Excellent. So you spoke about investment. Now I wanted to look at exports, maybe say from Zimbabwe, those that want to export anything in Australia. Would there be opportunities that maybe you could highlight for us?
Yeah, well, look, it depends. I guess like in any export product, I think it's finding the market and promoting it. But I think obviously the horticulture industry in Zimbabwe is something that's being revived, and that's something that actually we've got a little bit of collaboration with Zimbabwe on. Nice. But I think the potential there, because Zimbabwe is so rich and its natural resources are so abundant, in terms of horticultural produce, I think the things that Zimbabwe produces for many months of the year that are not produced in many other countries, they're the kind of areas where you might get your niche opportunities, because Zimbabwe, with this extraordinary climate and great agriculture sector, has a lot of potential. I know a lot of those exports probably go, I know there's quite a lot of growing trade with Europe and some of the horticultural products because it's a bit closer, but I think there are ways to export. And I think when you look at what's going on between South Africa and Australia, there is a lot of very vibrant trade relationship there, which of course is not that far. So using some of those linkages with particularly horticultural products, I think in those niche areas for those months of the year where Zimbabwe may be one of the few countries that can get blueberries or lychees or macadamia nuts on the shelves in Australian supermarkets when maybe they're not growing in other parts of the world. So I think some of those niche areas are worth looking at. Your
Excellency, thank you so much for shedding light on that. And on that note, I would like us to take a short break. And when we return, we then focus on the bilateral relations between Zimbabwe and Australia. We'll also dive deeper into areas of cooperation between the two countries.
Of course.
Viewers, thank you so much. Don't go away. When we return, we then look at the bilateral relations between Zimbabwe and Australia. Welcome back. Now, Your Excellency, you cannot talk about Australia and not talk about kangaroos. Would you want to briefly talk about this animal and any other species of interest?
Of course, I'd be very happy to talk about kangaroos. Well, I guess it's one of the most well-known Australian animals. There's a few others a lot of people probably know, koalas, emus, wombats maybe. But basically these, in fact 90% of the animals in Australia are only found in Australia. So it's quite exciting because they're very special and unusual. And the kangaroo, of course, is very well known. It's on our coat of arms. Kangaroos, as people know, hop or jump, if you like, and they can jump incredibly high and incredibly long distances and move very quickly. They have a really strong tail, and they go back on their tail and kick if they come across an adversary. So the way they fight and engage is quite unusual. There are also, of course, people might have seen the images of kangaroos carry their babies in a pouch. So when you see kangaroos in the wild, which is not that difficult to do, you sometimes see the little baby poking out of the pouch. So they're quite adorable. One thing that's interesting though is that we Australian people are completely outnumbered. There's about 26 million of us, and there's about 40 million kangaroos.
40 million kangaroos.
Yes, so we are well and truly outnumbered.
We are outnumbered for real. Okay, excellent. Now, every time you know, I mean, you watch TV, there's one thing that also comes out about Australia, a lot of the, you know, veld fires. Now, are these kangaroos and, you know, other animals not in danger arising out of these bushfires?
Look, absolutely they are. I mean, the kangaroos have some advantage because they can move quickly as opposed to the koalas, for example, which live in the trees and can't move quickly. But the reality is bushfires have been part of the Australian scene for centuries and centuries.
Oh, is it?
They are becoming, unfortunately, more frequent and more severe because of climate change, as we're seeing in many parts of the world. But they are something that have been a part of the Australian landscape for a very long time. It's so much so that there are certain plants that the seeds are only released after a bushfire or after extreme heat. So it's part of the way the ecological system has adapted. But it is something like Zimbabwe and like other countries that we're facing increasing challenges on and trying to find, as we all are, in terms of the impacts of climate change, trying to find ways to adapt and prepare better.
It is real and solutions need to be found.
Yeah.
Now let's switch and talk about bilateral relations between our two countries. How are they?
Look, the bilateral relations are very good. They're long-standing. Australia was a big supporter of Zimbabwe's independence, played quite a key role in that time in pushing for independence, and we've had at that stage with the High Commission, we've had a continuous presence since 1980. So we've got very strong links, and we've also got there's a lot of Zimbabweans in Australia. I think it's about 45,000 now. So a lot of these people-to-people connections, which, as you know, are very powerful. But we also we've got a lot of shared interests. We've got the trade and investment relationship, which we touched on, which we as an embassy really want to support and encourage and grow. We've got a lot of complementarities in mining and agricultural expertise. So that's something that we continue to work on and hope will expand. But we're also facing, you know, we mentioned climate change, and we're both countries that are prone to drought and to challenging environments. So finding more ways we can cooperate on that. And we're in fact doing a bit of work in these areas. And other broader challenges around gender equality and women's economic empowerment, you know, a lot of shared interests in many areas. So so it's quite a diverse and very, very strong bilateral relationship, particularly those links with the long-standing links with the people-to-people side.
Exciting to hear that. Now, you've already highlighted some of the areas of cooperation, you know, economic empowerment, educational sector. Are there any other areas of cooperation that you would want to talk about? I am aware that your country is doing quite a lot in terms of supporting poverty alleviation programs. Would you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, look, we did do a few specific programs around the COVID alleviation side. One of it was, and we try to do things that are responding to things that come up in our discussions. People say, oh, we're interested in getting a bit of support or sharing experiences. So one of the areas, in fact, I mentioned gender equality issues and women's empowerment. One of the areas that we were facing challenges on in Australia was around domestic violence issues. In terms of gender equality, gender-based violence is an ongoing challenge for so many countries around the world. So in Australia, we developed an online training program for people responding to domestic violence issues during COVID. But it was all virtual. The difference in these programs is that under COVID, obviously, suddenly you can't get people together in the room. So there was this online free resource that was a very good program for frontline responders, whether it was psychologists or nurses or doctors or social workers. And we shared that with the government agencies here and different groups, just so they could have something a bit more. And we did a few other programs direct with community groups working here on various ones, just to try to make things, you know, a bit easier to manage during COVID. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And just looking at, you know, one area that also brings people together, you know, is sport as well as culture.
Oh, yes.
Are there any exchange programs between the two countries in terms of this?
Well, there's quite a few big things coming up, I should mention firstly. In terms of Australia hosting sport, as you say, it's a big part of Australian culture. Australia is going to be hosting the Olympics in the Olympics in 2032. And we've got we've got the World Cup Women's Basketball, we've got the World Cup Road Cycling coming up. We've got the women's soccer, FIFA soccer coming up. We've got a lot of big programs coming up, but specifically also we've had, just recently, in fact, we had the Zimbabwe cricket team down in Australia playing the 3 one-day internationals. In one of them, they beat Australia for the first time since 2014, I think. So that was really exciting. I think put a lot of attention on the Zim team, which was terrific.
Yeah, we've been waiting for such a moment for a very long time.
It was fantastic. It makes it all a lot more exciting, and they're going back, of course, for the T20 series soon. So that's been really good. But we've also got, on a smaller scale, I guess, we've sponsored through our direct aid program. There's a local group called Grassroots Cricket, which is providing cricket opportunities to children in more sort of vulnerable communities, giving them, a bit more empowerment to play sport and to get involved. And we've done a few projects like that at that sort of local level to keep up that sporting interest.
We certainly need more of that support. Let us take again another short break, and when we return, we then look at Ambassador Moules. We want to know a little bit about yourself. So viewers, there you had it. We are taking a short break, and when we return, we want to get to know a little bit about Her Excellency. Welcome back to the final, which is the third segment of our program. Very exciting indeed. Now, Your Excellency, I had already highlighted, we want to now get to know a little bit about yourself. I know you've been in Zim for 4 years now. Where were you born, and tell us about your career before you were posted to Zimbabwe?
Sure. Well, I was born in Newcastle in Australia, which is a town about a few hours north of Sydney. And when I was very young, I lived in different parts of Australia, in Tasmania and in Perth and Sydney, but since I've been working and at university, I moved to Canberra, the capital.
Okay.
And I'm a career diplomat. I joined our Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade when I finished university, and I've been working in Canberra or on posting various parts of the world since then.
Oh, exciting. So you've been in the Foreign Affairs Ministry ever since?
Yes.
And how long has it been now, until now?
I joined in 1990, so 1990. It's a long time.
Yeah,
it's a long time.
1990. It's a long time.
32 years.
Just over 30 years.
Yeah, more than 30 years.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Does the ambassador, enjoy any of the local music? Maybe arts and culture as well.
I love the local music and the arts and culture. There's so many things about it that I love. I have the advantage here of having a 14-year-old daughter who's obsessed with African music and dance and spends a lot of her time. She knows everything about all the singers, and in fact I was at a function. I had the pleasure to be at a function recently that the Swedish Embassy was hosting, and Amara Brown was there.
Nice.
And I was very excited to see her, of course. And I took a photo with her and sent it to my daughter. I made the mistake of sending it to my 14-year-old daughter, who shot a message back saying, I'm crying, because she was so upset that I was there with Amara Brown and she wasn't. But no, seriously, the wealth of talent in this country is phenomenal, and there's some great music, there's beautiful singing, there's extraordinary dancing, and the crafts and the culture, the stone carvings and the paintings. We've actually done a little bit of work to support the National Gallery in Bulawayo, to try to do some of the repairs that were done in the last couple of years to the gallery there, and also to make it a bit more accessible for people with movement restraints, to put a wheelchair ramp in there. And we also, on that front also, we helped them do up their library a little bit and provided a collection of books on Australian Indigenous art. This is an example behind us, and we have some books here.
Very nice, by the way.
Yeah, so, but it really sort of resonates, I think, with a lot of artists here. So we provided some materials to the National Gallery there in Bulawayo. So we've tried to have a bit of exchange on that front, but it's a fantastic culture and history and music, and I just wish more Australians could experience that. I hope we get some more tourists coming over soon.
That's exciting, because you've just raised the issue relating to tourists. What can we be doing? I mean, maybe firstly, how do the numbers look like? I know obviously because of COVID, maybe things took a bit of a dip, but how are the numbers looking, and what can we do as Zimbabwe to also maybe attract more, tourists from Australia?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The numbers have been low, but they are starting to pick up. We're seeing more people come from Australia. I think more awareness about what Zimbabwe has to offer. I think it's, even though we've got the connections and the diaspora in Australia, a lot of people don't know a lot about Zimbabwe, or the images might be a bit out of date. I think what I find is whenever somebody does come here, I've had family visit, I've had friends visit, people love it almost immediately.
They love what they see.
They love what they see, no matter where they go, they love it. So it doesn't take much to convince people what a spectacular country it is. And I think, it's safe and it's easy and it's beautiful and the people are so warm and friendly. And I think there's probably I think there could be more appreciation of that, as well as the extraordinary natural beauty and wildlife. So I think, and we as an embassy also want to raise awareness, raise understanding of that.
Appreciate it. And lastly, how does the ambassador spend her free time?
Well, in this country, in this beautiful country, it's not hard. I love being in nature. I love being,
love nature.
Even just going to Dombashawa or going to I love the rock formation areas are so beautiful. And if I've got a bit more time anywhere where you're in the wilderness, in the Zimbabwe wilderness, I find it so rejuvenating and so beautiful. So that's my ideal of a way to relax and recharge. It's very, very special.
Very special.
Very beautiful.
I really like this and I'm enjoying it. And I'd say this is the last question, but allow me to add just one more.
Of course.
Which tourist areas in Zimbabwe have you visited, and how was your experience?
I've had the good fortune to visit quite a few, and I can honestly say I've loved everywhere. I've went in every direction of the country, whether it's the Eastern Highlands or Wangi or Maniples, but also in the southern part of the country, in the Save Valley, Mashvingo area, and as I said, getting into some of those wilderness areas, it's incredibly special. So, but every direction I've headed off in has been spectacular. Been very fortunate. Yeah.
Nice. Your Excellency, it was a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much for sharing all those nice insights about Australia and your experiences in Zimbabwe in terms of the tourist facilities that you have visited. Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure. Viewers, it was a pleasure to... Oh, sorry, you needed to respond.
Thank you. No, thank you. It was an absolute delight to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Viewers, that was Her Excellency, the Australian Ambassador to Zimbabwe, Miss Bronte Moules. What a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to having you in future episodes.